There are moments in life when everything around you tells you to panic. The bills pile up, opportunities disappear, people lose faith in you, and the world keeps repeating the same message. Go search harder, struggle more, chase something outside yourself. But what if the greatest mistake you have ever made was believing that your future depends on the outer world? What if the life you desire is not waiting in a company, a paycheck, or another person's approval? Tonight, I want you to hear something deeper, something that can completely transform the way you see yourself, your purpose, and your power. Because the moment you stop seeing yourself as powerless, the moment you awaken to the creative force within you, your entire reality begins to change. Most people have been conditioned to believe that their value depends entirely on what the outer world says about them. From childhood, they are taught to chase approval, seek security through jobs, and define themselves by titles and income. The moment they lose employment or face rejection, fear immediately enters their mind because they believe their source has disappeared. But this way of thinking is the very thing that keeps people trapped in struggle. The outer world was never meant to be your master. It was only meant to reflect the inner state you consistently occupy. The truth is that your imagination is your real employment. It is the creative power through which all realities are formed. Every condition you experience first existed as a thought, a belief, or an assumption within consciousness before it appeared in physical form. A person who constantly imagines failure unknowingly prepares themselves to experience it. They wake up thinking about lack, fear, and uncertainty, and then wonder why life keeps reflecting obstacles back to them. Meanwhile, another person may stand in the exact same situation outwardly, yet inwardly refuse to accept defeat. They continue imagining themselves successful, supported, and secure despite appearances. In time, their world begins to rearrange itself according to that inner conviction. This is because imagination is not fantasy. It is the blueprint of reality itself. What you repeatedly feel and accept inwardly eventually hardens into fact. Most people underestimate the conversations they hold within themselves every day. They say things like, I can't survive without this job, nothing ever works for me, or life is unfair. These thoughts may appear harmless, but they are creative acts. The subconscious mind accepts repeated assumptions as truth and begins producing experiences that match them. The outer world faithfully mirrors the dominant state of consciousness you carry within. If you continually identify with struggle, struggle becomes familiar and persistent. But if you begin identifying with abundance, confidence, and fulfillment, life must eventually reflect those qualities back to you. The problem is not that people lack opportunity. The problem is that most people have accepted limitation as their identity. They have become emotionally attached to the role of someone who is waiting, hoping, and struggling. They search endlessly outside themselves because they do not realize that the power they seek is already operating within them. The imagination is not weak, it is not passive. It is the spiritual force shaping every circumstance of life. When you imagine yourself already successful, already secure, already living the life you desire, you are planting seeds into consciousness. And every seed planted with feeling eventually produces visible results. This is why you must become careful about what you entertain mentally. Every image you repeatedly accept becomes part of your future. If you spend your days imagining rejection, poverty, or disappointment, you unknowingly move toward those experiences. But if you deliberately imagine freedom, abundance, and achievement, you begin moving toward an entirely different reality. Life always moves in the direction of your dominant assumption. The world teaches people to rely only on physical action while ignoring the inner state that creates results. Yet two people can perform the same actions and receive completely different outcomes because their consciousness is different. One acts from fear and desperation. The other acts from confidence and certainty. One believes they are unworthy. The other feels naturally deserving of success. The outer actions may appear similar, but the inner identity behind those actions changes everything. When you truly understand this principle, you stop worshipping circumstances. You stop allowing temporary appearances to define your future. Instead of reacting emotionally to problems, you begin creating inwardly the reality you prefer to experience. Even before evidence appears, you persist in the feeling that your life is already improving. This is not denial, it is spiritual discipline. It is choosing to remain loyal to the vision within rather than surrendering to fear. Every great transformation begins invisibly. Before a building appears physically, it first exists in the mind of the architect. Before success manifests outwardly, it must first become real inwardly. The same law applies to your life. If you cannot imagine yourself prosperous, secure, and fulfilled, you will continue repeating old patterns. But once you begin mentally living from the end you desire, reality starts reorganizing around your new assumption. So stop seeing yourself as unemployed, unlucky, or limited by present conditions. Those are only temporary shadows produced by past assumptions. Your true power lies in your ability to imagine a new reality and remain faithful to it. Your imagination is not escaping reality, it is creating it. The moment you consciously occupy the feeling of the life you desire, you activate forces beyond human explanation. Opportunities begin appearing unexpectedly. Ideas flow naturally. Connections form effortlessly. What once felt impossible begins unfolding in ways you could never predict. Never forget this: the outer world does not determine your future. Your inner world does. Your imagination is your true source, your true power, and your true employment. Once you understand that, fear begins to disappear, and life itself starts responding to the new person you have decided to become. One of the greatest mistakes people make in life is believing they must endlessly chase what they desire. They chase money, relationships, success, opportunities, and approval as though these things exist outside themselves and must be hunted down through struggle. Society teaches that achievement only comes through constant force, pressure, and exhaustion. As a result, most people spend their lives running after things while secretly feeling incomplete within. But the more desperately a person chases something, the more they unconsciously confirm that they do not already possess it. And that feeling of not having continues to reproduce itself in their reality. The truth is that life does not respond to desperation. It responds to identity. The world mirrors the state of consciousness you consistently occupy. If you internally feel abandoned, life reflects abandonment. If you feel unlucky, life confirms that assumption. If you feel unworthy of success, opportunities somehow continue slipping away. It is not because the universe is punishing you. It is because the outer world can only echo what you deeply believe yourself to be. This is why chasing often creates resistance. When a person constantly says, "I need this, I must have this, I hope this happens," they remain emotionally identified with lack. Their focus is not on fulfillment but on absence. They unknowingly reinforce the reality of not having every single day. The mind then continues generating experiences that match that emotional state. What you persistently feel becomes your reality. But there is another way to live, a completely different approach that transforms everything. Instead of chasing, you assume. Instead of begging life to change, you become inwardly convinced that it already has. This is the hidden secret behind effortless transformation. The moment you assume the feeling of already being successful, already loved, already secure, your relationship with reality changes entirely. To assume does not mean to pretend outwardly for other people. It means inwardly accepting a new identity so fully that it begins to feel natural to you. Most people wait for external proof before they believe in themselves. But true creative power works in reverse. You believe first, and then reality reshapes itself around that belief. The outer world follows the inner assumption. Think about how differently you would move through life if you already knew your future was secure. You would not wake up in fear every morning. You would not constantly doubt yourself. You would not panic over temporary setbacks. There would be calmness within you because you would already feel established inwardly. That inner confidence changes your thoughts, your energy, your decisions, and eventually your circumstances. The problem is that many people allow appearances to control their state of mind. When they see delay, they assume failure. When they experience rejection, they assume unworthiness. When they face obstacles, they immediately abandon faith in themselves. But appearances are only reflections of previous assumptions. They are not permanent truths. If you continue reacting emotionally to current conditions, you remain trapped in the same cycle that created them. The key is persistence in the new assumption. You must learn to mentally live from the reality you desire before it physically appears. If you desire abundance, begin thinking from abundance instead of from fear. If you desire success, stop identifying as someone struggling to become successful and start feeling like a person who naturally succeeds. The outer world will eventually catch up to the inner state you consistently maintain. This principle explains why some people seem to attract opportunities effortlessly while others struggle endlessly. The difference is not always talent, education, or luck. Often it is identity. One person expects life to work in their favor, while another secretly expects disappointment. One feels worthy of receiving good things, while the other unconsciously doubts themselves. These assumptions quietly shape every interaction and experience. When you stop chasing and start assuming, you also stop forcing life. You no longer operate from panic or fear, because you understand that what belongs to you will unfold naturally through the state you embody. Instead of exhausting yourself trying to control every outcome, you focus on mastering your inner world. You become disciplined about your thoughts, emotions, and self-concept because you realize that consciousness creates reality. This does not mean you become passive or lazy. Inspired action still occurs, but it no longer comes from desperation. Action becomes natural, confident, and aligned. Opportunities appear at the right time. Ideas come unexpectedly. Doors open without strain. Life begins flowing differently because your inner identity has changed first. Most people spend years chasing manifestations without realizing they are carrying the identity of someone who does not already have them. That is why nothing changes. Transformation begins the moment you stop asking life for permission to become who you desire to be. You decide inwardly. You assume inwardly. You claim the feeling now instead of waiting for evidence later. Always remember this: what you chase implies separation, but what you assume becomes part of your identity. And once something feels natural within you, reality has no choice but to reflect it outwardly. So stop running after the life you desire as though it is far away. Become the person who already possesses it within. The moment you do, the world itself begins reorganizing to match your assumption. Most people spend their entire lives trying to change the outer world without ever realizing that the outer world is only a mirror. They fight circumstances, blame people, fear conditions, and react emotionally to everything happening around them. When problems appear, they believe the problem exists outside themselves. When opportunities disappear, they think life is against them. But the hidden truth is that the world around you is constantly reflecting the state of consciousness you carry within. Life is not happening randomly. It is responding to your dominant assumptions, beliefs, and inner feelings every single day. Every person lives from a certain inner identity, whether they realize it or not. Some people inwardly identify as victims of life. Others identify as fortunate, capable, and worthy. These inner identities silently shape the experiences they attract. A person who constantly expects rejection often encounters rejection. Someone who secretly believes they are not good enough continues meeting circumstances that confirm that belief. Meanwhile, another person with deep inner confidence naturally draws opportunities, support, and success into their life. The outer experiences differ because the inner states differ. The world acts like a mirror, reflecting your consciousness back to you. A mirror does not create an image on its own, it only reflects what stands before it. In the same way, life reflects the emotional and mental state you consistently embody. If fear dominates your mind, fearful situations continue appearing. If insecurity fills your thoughts, life keeps presenting circumstances that strengthen insecurity. But when peace, confidence, and abundance become natural within you, reality begins reshaping itself to match those qualities. This is why changing circumstances alone never creates lasting transformation. Many people believe that if they had more money, a better job, or a different relationship, they would finally feel fulfilled. But even when external conditions improve temporarily, their inner state often remains unchanged. Soon, old fears and old patterns return because consciousness itself was never transformed. The outer world can only permanently change when the inner self changes first. Most people are completely unaware of the conversations happening in their minds every day. They repeatedly think thoughts like, "Nothing works out for me," "I'm always struggling," or "People don't value me." Though these thoughts seem small, they are powerful assumptions being impressed upon the subconscious mind. Over time, the subconscious accepts these ideas as truth and produces experiences that mirror them. What you continuously think and feel becomes the atmosphere of your life. This is why you must become more aware of your inner world than your outer world. Your external circumstances are only delayed reflections of previous states of consciousness. If you constantly react emotionally to current conditions, you keep recreating the same reality. But if you deliberately choose a new inner state regardless of appearances, you begin changing the future itself. Imagine someone standing before a mirror trying to change their reflection without changing themselves. It would be impossible. Yet this is what most people do with life. They want different results while continuing to hold the same fears, doubts, and assumptions internally. They desire abundance while constantly feeling lack. They desire love while internally feeling unworthy. They desire success while secretly expecting failure. The mirror faithfully reflects whatever stands before it. The key to transformation is not forcing the world to change. The key is changing the self within. When your self-concept changes, your reality must eventually change as well. If you begin seeing yourself as valuable, capable, and supported, your behavior naturally changes. Your energy changes. Your expectations change. And because your inner state has shifted, life begins reflecting new experiences back to you. This principle explains why two people can face identical situations yet experience completely different outcomes. One person sees opportunity while another sees limitation. One remains calm while another falls into fear. One expects miracles while another expects failure. Their external world begins responding according to the inner meaning they assign to life. Consciousness shapes perception, and perception shapes experience. You must stop allowing temporary appearances to define your identity. Circumstances are not permanent truths. They are only echoes of previous assumptions. The moment you accept a new identity inwardly, reality begins moving in unseen ways to reflect it. Even if nothing changes immediately on the surface, the process has already begun. Every new assumption planted within consciousness eventually expresses itself outwardly. This is why persistence is so important. Many people give up because they do not see instant evidence. They return to fear the moment circumstances appear unchanged. But the outer world takes time to reorganize itself. Just as a seed planted in the ground remains unseen before it grows, your inner transformation often begins invisibly before becoming visible in physical reality. The key is remaining faithful to the new state until it becomes natural within you. Never forget that your inner world is the true cause and the outer world is only the effect. Once you understand this, you stop feeling powerless before circumstances. You stop reacting to life as though it controls you. Instead, you begin consciously choosing the state you wish to embody. And as you persist in that new identity, the mirror of life begins reflecting a completely different reality back to you. Most people misunderstand faith. They think faith means simply hoping that things will improve someday. They believe faith is wishing, waiting, or praying while secretly doubting within themselves. But true faith is far deeper than that. Faith is not passive hope. Faith is the ability to mentally and emotionally live from the reality you desire before it physically appears. It is choosing to remain loyal to an unseen state even when the outer world shows no evidence yet. This is why so few people truly transform their lives, because most continue living from their present limitations instead of from their desired future. The average person constantly looks at current circumstances to determine how they should feel. If money is low, they feel fear. If opportunities disappear, they feel hopelessness. If relationships fail, they feel rejected. Their emotional state is completely controlled by appearances. But the one who understands the power of consciousness does not surrender to appearances so easily. They understand that the visible world is only a delayed reflection of past assumptions. Therefore, instead of reacting emotionally to present conditions, they choose inwardly to live from the end they desire. Living from the end means mentally occupying the state of the wish already fulfilled. Instead of asking, "How will this happen?" you begin asking, "How would I feel if it were already true?" That feeling becomes the secret. The subconscious mind responds not to words alone, but to emotional conviction. Whatever feels natural and real within you eventually becomes expressed in your outer world. For example, a person who desires financial freedom often continues thinking from poverty even while trying to manifest abundance. They constantly worry about bills, fear the future, and emotionally identify with struggle. Even though they say they want wealth, their dominant state remains lack. As long as they continue living emotionally from scarcity, they continue reproducing scarcity. But the moment they begin inwardly feeling secure, supported, and abundant, their consciousness changes. And once consciousness changes, reality must eventually follow. Faith requires persistence, because the outer world does not always change immediately. This is where most people fail. They begin imagining a better life for a few days, but the moment circumstances remain the same, they return to fear and doubt. They allow appearances to destroy the new state they were building internally. But true faith refuses to surrender simply because evidence has not appeared yet. It understands that creation happens inwardly first and outwardly second. Think of a farmer planting seeds into the ground. After planting, the farmer does not dig the seeds up every day to check whether they are growing. They trust the unseen process taking place beneath the surface. In the same way, every assumption planted deeply into consciousness begins growing invisibly before it becomes visible in physical reality. The person with faith remains loyal to the unseen result even while the outer world still looks unchanged. Living from the end also changes the way you move through life. When you already feel inwardly fulfilled, you stop operating from desperation. Fear loses its grip on you because you no longer feel separated from your desire. Instead of chasing outcomes anxiously, you carry quiet certainty within yourself. That inner calmness changes your decisions, your reactions, and even the opportunities you attract. Most people delay happiness until circumstances improve. They say, I will feel confident once I succeed, or I will feel secure once I have money. But this way of thinking keeps fulfillment forever in the future. The truth is that the inner feeling must come first. You do not become confident because life changes. Life changes because you become confident. You do not feel abundant after success arrives. Success arrives because abundance became natural within you first. This is why imagination is so powerful. Through imagination, you can experience inwardly what has not yet appeared outwardly. You can mentally step into the reality you desire and feel it as though it were already true. The subconscious mind cannot fully distinguish between a vividly imagined experience and a physical one. What it accepts emotionally as real begins influencing your external reality in remarkable ways. Faith also means refusing to identify yourself with temporary conditions. You may currently face rejection, delay, or uncertainty, but those conditions do not define your future unless you continue emotionally attaching yourself to them. Circumstances are temporary shadows produced by previous assumptions. The moment you persist in a new state of consciousness, the shadows begin changing. There will be moments when doubt tries to return. The outer world may appear unchanged for a time. People around you may not understand your vision, but this is precisely where faith becomes powerful. Faith is remaining inwardly faithful to your desired reality, even when logic, appearances, and past experiences suggest otherwise. It is the courage to believe in the unseen until it hardens into fact. Never forget this truth. You are always living from some end, whether consciously or unconsciously. Many people unknowingly live from the end of failure, fear, and limitation because those states have become familiar to them. But you can choose differently. You can decide today to mentally live from success, abundance, peace, and fulfillment instead. The moment you stop waiting for permission from the outer world and begin inwardly occupying the reality you desire, everything starts shifting. Life begins responding to your new state. Opportunities appear, paths unfold. Circumstances rearrange themselves in ways you could never predict. Because faith is not about forcing reality. It is about becoming inwardly aligned with the reality you wish to experience. And once that alignment becomes natural within you, the outer world has no choice but to reflect it. For generations, people have been taught to search for power outside themselves. They look to circumstances, other people, governments, jobs, luck, and even distant forces in the sky, hoping something external will finally change their lives. They pray for miracles while continuing to feel powerless within. They wait for someone to rescue them, approve them, or choose them. But the greatest truth a person can awaken to is this: the creative power they have been searching for has always existed within their own consciousness. The force that shapes reality does not operate outside of you. It operates through you. Most people live disconnected from this understanding. They believe life happens to them rather than through them. Because of this belief, they constantly react emotionally to circumstances. When problems appear, they feel defeated. When rejection comes, they lose confidence. When opportunities disappear, they assume they are unlucky or forgotten. They fail to realize that the outer world is not the source of their experience. It is only the reflection of the inner state they continuously occupy. The moment you understand that the creative force of life moves through your awareness, everything begins to change. You stop seeing yourself as a victim of circumstances. You stop believing that other people control your destiny. Instead, you begin recognizing that your thoughts, assumptions, emotions, and inner conversations are constantly shaping the reality you experience. What you accept inwardly eventually becomes expressed outwardly. Every day, people unknowingly use this power without awareness. Someone who constantly says, "Nothing ever works out for me," continues meeting disappointment because they are impressing limitation upon their subconscious mind. Another person repeatedly imagines success, opportunity, and abundance, and somehow life continues opening doors for them. The difference is not luck. The difference is consciousness. Life faithfully mirrors the inner beliefs a person consistently entertains. The problem is that most people have been conditioned to doubt their own creative power. They trust appearances more than imagination. They trust fear more than faith. They allow temporary circumstances to define what they believe is possible. But appearances are only shadows of previous assumptions. The real cause exists within consciousness itself. When you truly understand that God works through you, prayer changes completely. Prayer is no longer begging a distant power for help while feeling helpless inside. True prayer becomes the act of inwardly accepting the reality you desire as though it already exists. It becomes a shift in identity. Instead of asking endlessly for abundance while feeling poor, you begin feeling inwardly secure and supported now. Instead of asking for success while secretly doubting yourself, you begin identifying as successful within. The outer world then begins reflecting the state you have accepted inwardly. This is why your inner conversations are so important. Every thought you repeatedly entertain is shaping your future. If your mind is constantly filled with fear, criticism, and limitation, you continue creating experiences that match those states. But if you deliberately choose thoughts of confidence, gratitude, abundance, and possibility, your reality begins changing accordingly. Consciousness is always creating, whether you are aware of it or not. Many people spend years trying to force change externally while neglecting the inner cause. They change jobs, relationships, and environments, yet continue experiencing the same emotional patterns because their self-concept remains unchanged. Wherever they go, they bring the same consciousness with them. But the moment the inner identity shifts, life itself begins reorganizing. You were never created to live in fear of the world. You were created to awaken to the power operating through your awareness. This does not mean you become arrogant or believe you control every detail through force. It means you understand that your dominant assumptions influence the reality you experience. It means you stop surrendering your power to circumstances and begin consciously directing your inner state. When you recognize that God works through you, you stop waiting for external permission to feel worthy, abundant, or successful. You no longer depend entirely on appearances for emotional security. Instead, you cultivate the feeling within first. You understand that the external world is only catching up to the internal shift already taking place. This understanding also changes how you face challenges. Instead of collapsing emotionally during difficult moments, you remind yourself that circumstances are temporary reflections, not permanent truths. You stop reacting from fear and begin responding from faith. Even when evidence is absent, you remain loyal to the vision within because you understand that reality always follows consciousness. The power within you is greater than any temporary obstacle. It is greater than rejection, delay, or uncertainty. Every great transformation begins the moment a person stops identifying with limitation and begins identifying with possibility. The world may not immediately reflect your new assumption, but if you persist inwardly, the outer change becomes inevitable. Never forget this. You are not separate from the creative force of life. The same intelligence that moves the stars, grows the forests, and shapes the universe is expressing itself through your awareness right now. Your imagination is not insignificant. Your assumptions are not meaningless. Your inner state is constantly influencing the reality you experience. So stop searching endlessly outside yourself for the power to change your life. Stop believing that your future depends entirely on external conditions. Turn inward instead. Strengthen your self concept. Guard your thoughts carefully. Choose faith over fear. Choose abundance over limitation. And as you begin aligning your consciousness with the reality you desire, life itself will begin responding in ways that once seemed impossible. Because the power you seek has never been outside you, it has always been working through you. The truth is, you were never meant to live in fear, desperation, or limitation. You were meant to awaken to the power within your own consciousness. The world may tell you that opportunity is scarce, that success belongs only to a few, or that you must endlessly struggle to survive. But do not accept that story. Your inner world is the foundation of your outer reality. The moment you assume abundance, security, and purpose within yourself, life begins moving in ways you cannot explain. Doors will open, paths will appear, opportunities will find you, not because of luck, but because you finally became aligned with the reality you desired. So leave behind the identity of someone who is waiting to be chosen. Choose yourself. Believe in the unseen. Walk in faith before the evidence appears. And remember this always, the power you have been searching for has been within you the entire time. Thank you all for being here and sharing this moment together. I truly hope these words awaken something powerful within you. If this message touched your heart, carry it with you daily and never underestimate the power of your own mind, your assumptions, and your inner belief. Keep believing, keep imagining greater things for your life, and never give up on the vision you hold within. Your reality can change the moment you change yourself within. Thank you, and may abundance, peace, and purpose follow you wherever you go.